Thank you. Thank you, Ari. Actually, when Ari said I was a supporter of net neutrality, and I said, well, I'm an advocate, before I said, you write for a magazine, he said, what's the difference? And then I said, you write for a magazine? Netroots Nation 2011, welcome to Minnesota. This is the state that sent Hubert Humphrey, the middle-class son of a pharmacist, to the U.S. Senate, where he cheerfully waged and usually won great battles in the name of the young and the old and the poor and the vulnerable, the oppressed and the disenfranchised. This is the state where Walter Mondale, who at age 20 had helped organize Humphrey's first Senate campaign, rose to become the living embodiment of common sense, Midwestern progressive values. And this is the age where Paul Wellstone, a professor down at Carleton College in Northfield, became my hero and the hero of a generation of progressives who believed, as he did, that we all do better when we all do better. We all do better when we have health care. We all do better when we all can get a good education. We all do better when we can earn a fair wage at a good job. We all do better when we can find a good home and economic security and justice when we are wronged. Today, 100 years after Hubert Humphrey was born, nearly a half a century after Walter Mondale began his legendary career in public service, and 2 decades after Paul Wellstone won his first race for the Senate, we gather in Minnesota to take stock. We all believe that we all do better if we all do better. The question is, how are we doing? And if we're talking about the fate of ordinary families, the answer is clear: we're losing. The American middle class is in trouble. Median family income is down. Jobs are scarce. Opportunities that people thought they'd earn through hard work are disappearing before their eyes. Working families are falling further and further behind. And that means it's hard for progressives not to feel like we're losing too. Our movement is about putting the concerns of those working families at the forefront of our national agenda. Now, you can argue that Democrats in Congress should be doing more to win legislative battles. Although, as someone who is in the room every day, I can tell you that I have no doubt for a second on my colleagues' commitment to moving our country in the right direction. And you can argue that the Democratic Party should be using different tactics to win elections. But the fact remains, we as a progressive movement are losing the argument, one issue after issue. We are playing defense. We're ready to fight for cap and trade, but instead we're forced into an argument about whether global warming even exists. We're ready to fight for the Employee Free Choice Act, but instead we're forced into an argument about whether workers should have any rights at all. As proud as we are of our fight, the fight of our movement as shown in Wisconsin and around the country in the face of Republican efforts to end collectively bargaining, we know that these aren't the conversations we should be having in 2011. And instead of a debate about what the government should be doing to help the struggling middle class, we're having a debate about what parts of the social safety net we should sacrifice in order to preserve and extend giveaways to the wealthiest few and to the well-connected corporations. We can urge Democrats in Congress to stand stronger when Republicans hold our government hostage. We can urge each other to work harder to win elections, and you won't hear any disagreement from me on either count. But if we are going to win these fights, we have to start by reclaiming the upper hand in the argument over what our country should be about. And I want to suggest that conservatives might just have given us the playbook. For decades, their argument against progressive policies hasn't just been about the substance of our ideas, but about the scope of our vision. They call us radicals. They say we want to do too much, too fast. They accuse us of wanting to remake the fundamental fabric of American society as if we're proposing to rip a few dozen stars off of the flag. They understand that Americans don't like radical change. We have and love our country. We are rightfully proud of its traditions. We revere our past. And it's easy to offer people a return to the good old days when the economy was growing and everyone was optimistic and we went to bed at night secure in the knowledge that our kids would have better opportunities than we did. What conservatives miss when they talk about those good old days, of course, is that they were good for a reason. Some of you may have heard me talk about my childhood here in Minnesota. My dad never graduated high school. He was a printing salesman. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. Me, my mom, my dad, my brother. We were by no means rich, but we felt secure. I felt like the luckiest kid in the world, and I was. I was growing up middle class in a time when growing up middle class in America meant that there would be jobs for my parents, good schools for me to prepare myself for a career, and if I worked hard and played by the rules, a chance for me to do anything I wanted, including being a comedy writer and a senator. In that order. Between 1947 and 1977, we experienced 3 decades of incredible growth that flowed to the middle class. As we grew together. Everyone benefited. Income for the top 1/5 of Americans grew by 99% during that period. And income of those in the bottom 1/5 rose by 116%. I know that's hard to believe. The wages of the bottom 1/5 grew more than the wages of the top 1/5. Really, that happened. Meanwhile, the middle class could afford to buy more, so there was more demand, and that meant there were more jobs. And with the tax dollars that came from all this growth, the government built 40,000 miles of straight freeways that greatly reduced the cost of transporting goods. We invested in education that prepared kids for the workforce and created innovations that created entire new industries and strengthened the social safety net so that everyone could aspire to the middle class. Oh, and we sent a man to the moon. Actually, a number of them. Which brings me to my wife, Franny. When she was 17 months old, her dad, a decorated World War II vet, died in a car accident, leaving my future mother-in-law widowed at age 29 with 5 kids. That family made it because of Social Security survivor benefits. Every single one of the 4 girls in Franny's family went to college thanks to Pell Grants and other scholarships. My brother-in-law, Neil, went into the Coast Guard, where he became an electrical engineer. My mother-in-law got herself a $300 GI loan to fix her roof and instead used the money to go to the University of Maine. She became a grade school teacher and taught poor kids, Title I kids, and so her loans were forgiven. She and all 5 of those kids became productive members of society. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, but first they had to have the boots, and the government gave Fanny's family the boots. These are stories about security and opportunity. These are stories about the American dream. These are stories about the country we are so proud to call our own, the one we all want to protect and preserve. But they are also stories about a progressive America, one in which the government adopts the principle that we all do better when we all do better. It was our vision that government should provide economic security for the middle class and provide the boots for people who were looking to pull themselves up into the middle class. It is our vision that America should be in the business of making things, that we should invest in innovation and infrastructure so that we could have an economy where there's enough for everyone. It was our vision that American workers should earn enough to buy what they produced. It was our vision that everyone should have basic rights at work, and no matter how powerful their employer, and that the law should be a place where anyone can turn for justice. And although that vision always remained a work in progress, Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale and Paul Wellstone and generations of progressives made this country what we dreamed it could be for millions and millions of families. And while our vision was broad, the policies we fought for, from the social safety net to workers' rights to investments in our manufacturing sector, were grounded in values that began as progressive but have become simply American. And having built that America, we're all so proud of it. It's now up to us to save it. Progressives, in a way, are the new conservatives. We want to conserve what we fought so hard to build. The right-wingers who call themselves conservatives are the ones who want radical change in the way our government works and the way our country works. Newt Gingrich went on Meet the Press last month and said that the Ryan plan that would end Medicare was, quote, right-wing social engineering, unquote, that it was, quote, too big a jump. He has spent the month since apologizing, but for once in his life, Newt was right. Actually, that's not entirely fair. Newt was calling for electronic medical records before the rest of the country really got on board on that one, and so he was right that one other time. You got to give a guy credit, right? But ending Medicare, like privatizing Social Security, is astonishingly radical. Part of the middle class promise is that after a lifetime of hard work, you'll be able to retire and enjoy the fruits of that labor. Medicare was established to secure that promise. There was no private insurance market for people over 65 back when Medicare passed. And if Republicans destroy Medicare, there won't be one now. The average Social Security benefit now is $15,000. The average out-of-pocket health care cost for seniors under the Ryan plan, when it kicks in, would be over $12,000 a year. So if Republicans eliminate Medicare, America will become a country in which you can never retire. And once you physically can no longer work, you are desperately poor until you die. That is a radical change to our society. The Republican agenda is a radical vision in which Medicaid is slashed to the bone, in which we start to balance the budget on the backs of literally our most vulnerable citizens. Say you have a parent who suffers from dementia and lives in a nursing home. If Republicans pass these Medicaid cuts, you'd better be ready to take that parent in, even if you can't take care of your parent. That is a radical change to our society. The Republican vision is one in which we cut billions from job training and education and infrastructure, the things that enable ordinary Americans to find good jobs, enable businesses to find the customers and trained workers that they need to grow, and enable middle-class families to build real economic security. All these cuts just to fund more tax cuts for people who are richer than any people have ever been in the history of the world. It's a vision in which employees have no protection from their employers. Ordinary Americans have no access to the courts when they are wronged, and big corporations control everything from our media to the internet to our democracy. After decades of fighting any interpretation of the Constitution that secured basic rights for all Americans, conservatives have somehow found in that text special First Amendment rights for oil companies. The growing gap between rich and poor, the failure of our generation to leave our kids the America we inherited from our parents, and the inability of our political system to respond to these crises, for today's Republican parties, these are features, not bugs. The right wants America to be a nation of social Darwinism, in which the powerful are protected by government, and the rest of us are on our own. To achieve it, they'll say things that aren't true, disown ideas they used to support, contradict themselves on everything from the legislative process to how the weather works. They'll let the government shut down, let us default on our debts, bring our country to its knees to fulfill its ideological fervor. So how do we stop them? Well, I haven't been in politics my whole life, but I think we always win when we work together and stand on our values. Medicare and Medicaid and investment in infrastructure and in public education and workers' rights and civil rights and equal rights under the laws, these aren't just good progressive ideas, they're examples of traditional American values. And when Republicans talk about destroying these things, they are talking about turning their backs on the America that we have built. They're talking about ripping apart the fabric of our society. They're talking about a transformation of our country, about undermining our tradition so radically, they might as well be tearing stars off the flag. And we should say so. Here in the home of Humphrey and Mondale and Wellstone, I urge you all to stand up for America, for the America that our movement helped to build. Stand up for the principle that we should grow together instead of growing apart. Stand for the principle that we all do better when we all do better. Be proud to stand for Medicare and Medicaid. Be proud to stand with workers. Be proud to stand for a government that invests in America, a legal system that respects the rights of all individuals and the progressive values that we have fought so hard to defend. Be proud of who we are and what we have built. We have a tough fight ahead, but it's one that we have to win. It's not just the Democratic Party that's depending on us, it's the American middle class, and it's the American tradition, one that we helped to create and one that we must now protect. Thank you. Thank you.